Welcome back to the Untold Stories, exclusive before Start the Story Now. Subscribe to the channel and comment down where you're from and what time it is for you right now. Now, turn off the lights, settle in, and let the darkness speak. In the bitter winter of 1895, the small mountain settlement of Briar Hollow, Virginia, lay swallowed by the season's first true blizzard, the kind the old wives called a white burial. The wooden roofs bowed under the weight of new snow, and every chimney shivered as smoke fought its way into the sky. And yet, despite the cold, despite the thick curtains drawn across every window, something moved through the night. On December 14th, precisely at midnight, the courthouse belled once, then twice. Then a third time, though, the rope hung still. Old Silas Wren, sitting wakeful on his porch, swore he saw the shadows in the snow shift direction with every toll. Not from wind, from something walking across town. A single light burned behind the frosted panes of Dr. Samuel Coulter's two-story house. Inside, the doctor himself stood rigid, both palms pressed against the door as if he were holding it shut against a wolf. His breath fogged in front of him, though the fire behind him blazed high. He wore his overcoat indoors. His hat, too. As though he anticipated flight. From outside, Dr. Coulter. "Please, she needs you." The desperate voice belonged to Abel Fitch, a farmer, his boots buried in the snow up to the laces. He slammed the doctor's door with a frantic rhythm, not knocking, but warning. Inside the house, Dr. Coulter's eyes flooded with fear. Something ancient, familiar. He didn't open the door. He whispered through the wood, "I cannot deliver a midnight child. Not this night. Not again." Abel Fitch cursed, cried, begged. But the doctor only backed away, step by step, as though expecting the door to splinter inward. Then the last chime of midnight faded, and the screaming started. Not Abel's, not yet. A woman's scream, distant, stretching across the frozen valley, like something carried by the wind but born of no human throat. It came from Lila Hartwell's house. Young, fragile, 8 months pregnant. Lila. Her husband away in the mines. Her midwife trapped on the far side of the ridge by the firelit snowstorm. Her neighbors terrified to go near after the stories began. This is where our tale begins. Not with the birth, not with the death, but with the curse that had long existed before. Dr. Coulter ever laid eyes on Briar Hollow, the forgotten past of Briar Hollow, long before the coal roads cut their way into the valley. Long before the church was built, this was a place the original settlers avoided after dusk. A place where the Cherokees refused to hunt. A place that, in their tongue, meant where the moon bears children. The earliest settlers wrote of hearing crying in the woods on the new moon. Always the new moon. Always around midnight. They believed the valley was a cradle, but not for humans. A cradle for something else entirely. Most stories faded as the generations passed. People stopped repeating the warnings. People forgot until the winter of 1883. That was when a young doctor, fresh from Baltimore, made a choice that would follow him for the rest of his days. A choice documented in the ledger he kept hidden beneath his floorboards. A ledger that would not be discovered until it was far too late. But for now, in the bitter cold of 1895, all Briar Hollow knew was that a child was coming. A midnight child. And their only doctor refused to open his door. The land itself watches. The valley groaned under the weight of the storm. Picket fences disappeared into white mounds. Barn doors rattled with a mind of their own. Even the animals seemed aware of something unnatural. Horses refused to drink. Dogs hid under porches. Even the crows had abandoned their roosts. But the forests stood awake. Tall spruces clustered behind Lila Hartwell's small homestead. Their branches did not sag under the snow. Their needles did not quiver. It was said that if you stood long enough on Lila's back porch, you could hear a lullaby drifting from between the trunks, a lullaby with no words. A tune meant for a child who had not yet been born. and perhaps for another that never should have been. Inside her home, Lila writhed in pain, sweat freezing on her forehead. She whispered through chapped lips, "Not yet, not after midnight. Please, not again." But no one was there to answer her. And the doctor, the only one who knew the truth, cowered in his warm house, praying to a God who had abandoned the valley long ago. The snow kept falling, but the valley itself seemed to stop breathing, waiting, listening as the midnight child pressed closer to the world. A stillness settles before the night of the birth. Briar Hollow looked like any other rural town tucked into the Appalachian spine. Horses tied to hitching posts. Children kicking clumps of coal down the road. Storefronts with creaking signs. Wren's Mercantile, Greeley's Bakery, the Hollow Inn. The river ran slow and cold, dragging brown leaves beneath its glassy surface. But beneath the ordinary was an undercurrent. A quiet dread that people didn't speak of but never quite forgot. And at the center of that dread was Dr. Samuel Coulter. The doctor who walked like a shadow when Coulter moved to Briar Hollow in 1881. The town was grateful. Their previous physician had drunk himself into an early grave, and the valley was in desperate need of steady hands. Coulter's hands were steady. His voice was calm. He never married, never socialized, never attended church. Bookish, Miss Alma Greeley once muttered, but a good man. He traveled house to house by lantern, treating miners crushed under timber, women with birthing fever, children who coughed black dust from the mines drifting in their windows. He saved dozens of lives, but he couldn't save all of them. One in particular, a woman named Eleanor Price. Her diary would one day reveal the beginning of the valley's curse. Eleanor Price's diary fragment, I-1883. The doctor says my child grows strong, but I feel watched. When I fetch water at dusk, the woods hum. I see shapes between the trees. Samuel says I am only tired. I pray he is right. 2 months later, the child kicks only at night, never during the day. Always at midnight, the precise moment the new moon rises. Mother says such things are unlucky. And the final entry, if this child is born after midnight, I fear it will not be mine. Eleanor died during childbirth. Her baby, a quiet, pale infant, survived. And for 3 months, the doctor alone tended to it. Kept it fed. Kept it warm. Kept it hidden. Until the morning the Price family found the cradle empty. The doctor had burned the diary, or so he thought. Miss Alma had saved a portion. Why the doctor refused Lila Hartwell. Years had passed. 12 years of watching the woods. 12 years of waking at midnight to check his locks. 12 years of hearing the lullaby in his dreams. And then, in the fall of 1895, Lila Hartwell came to him, pale, trembling, saying the same words Eleanor had once spoken. It moves only after midnight, doctor. Like it's listening for something. He tried to hide his fear, but Lila noticed. Her final visit, 1 week before the storm, was the only time Dr. Coulter ever raised his voice. You must not labor at night. If the pains begin after dusk, you fight them. Do you hear me? This valley cannot bear another midnight child. Lila cried. The doctor trembled, and Miss Alma watched from the doorway, her limp pronounced, her eyes wide as if recognizing history, repeating. Dr. Coulter went home that night and sealed every window with fresh nails, because he knew what came for Eleanor's child. He knew what lived in the woods. He feared more than anything that it returned for another. The Hartwell house. Lila Hartwell lived on land her family had held for 3 generations. A narrow homestead hugged by a steep hillside and flanked by woods on 2 sides. A place where the wind never stopped humming. When Lila's belly grew large, she spent more time on the porch, rocking in her mother's old chair. Neighbors passing by often heard her murmuring, "Not at midnight, not at midnight." The closer her due date came, the colder the house felt. The hearth gave little heat. The walls creaked at strange hours. And twice, Abel Fitch swore he saw a small figure pressed against the back window. Not a person, not a child, Something small yet tall. Its proportions wrong. Lila stopped sleeping after that. And the doctor? He began to prepare. The doctor's hidden ledger excerpt, July 3rd, 1895. The signs return. The cold in the bones. The quiet in the trees. The shadow I saw in the road last night, no taller than a child, no heavier than mist, watched me. I believe it has come for another. October 11th, 1895. Lila Hartwell's pains begin after dusk. She claims the kicking wakes her precisely at the tolling of the courthouse bell. Eleanor's baby behaved the same. November 29th, 1895. This time, I must not falter. These entries were never meant to be, read by another soul. But fate had other plans. The valley had seen such a birth once before, and the doctor would let the snow bury him alive before he faced the consequences of it happening again. A hush creeps in. The storm arrived, early sheets of snow slamming against every rooftop like fists. The lanterns on Main Street flickered wildly, then died one by one, until only the church and courthouse still burned with oil. Inside her lonely house, Lila Hartwell felt the first true contraction. And as if responding to her pain, the woods outside fell silent. Even the wind stopped. What happened between dusk and dawn that night was recounted only through scattered testimony, frightened, shaken words from witnesses who wished they had never opened their doors. Abel Fitch's account. Abel sat awake because the storm made his barn creak. Around 11:30 p.m., he heard what he thought was a fox scream. When he went outside to check, he noticed something odd. Lila's house had a single lantern glowing, but the light didn't flicker. It pulsed like a heartbeat. He trudged through the snow toward her porch and heard her sobbing, gasping, struggling to breathe. He pounded her door. "Lila, I'm fetching the doctor. Hold on." But she screamed, "Don't leave me alone." There, in the trees, Abel don't leave. He left anyway, sprinting through knee-high snow toward Dr. Coulter's house. The doctor's refusal when Abel reached the doctor's door. The snow had thickened so much it erased his footprints as soon as they fell. He hammered on the wood. "Doc, she's in labor. Quick now." No answer. "Doc, it's Lila. It's coming early." Still nothing. "Dr. Coulter, she's dying." Finally a whisper came through the door. "Not after midnight. I cannot. I will not." Abel shouted until his throat bled, but the doctor's voice hardened. "If you value your life, leave that house behind." Then silence. Only the storm answered back at Lila's house. What Abel found when he returned would keep him awake for the rest of his short life. The lantern light still pulsed. The door creaked open on its own, and inside, the air was warm, thick with steam, as if the hearth blazed though the firebox was empty. Lila lay on the floor, her fingernails bloody from clawing the wood. "It's not mine," she whispered. "It's not mine, Abel." And then the house went black except for the window where a face appeared small white eyes too wide, and smiling. What happened after that, Abel never described in full. He only said the child was born without a cry. Born breathing cold air as if the world belonged to it. The footprints in the snow near dawn. The storm broke. The entire town woke to Abel's screams. By the time 3 neighbors arrived at the Hartwell house, the door hung open, the lantern lay shattered, and Lila's lifeless body rested in the center of the room. But the strangest sight was outside in the fresh snow behind her house. Small footprints, deep footprints, still walking in perfect circles around a spruce tree. Too small for a newborn. Impossible in their wake. And beside them Abel's footprints, ending abruptly, as though he had simply been lifted from the ground. In his place, only a scorch mark remained, as though something hot and weightless had stood there. Waiting. Calling. Claiming him. The child was nowhere to be found, and the doctor? He did not leave his house until the 7th day. Whatever was born that night slipped into the woods before sunrise, and something ancient, patient and hungry welcomed it home. The trees remembered. 7 days after the birth, When the townsfolk gathered in the church to mourn Lila Hartwell and Abel Fitch, Dr. Coulter entered wearing the same coat as the night of the storm. His boots were unlaced, his hair uncombed, his eyes hollow. He approached the pastor carrying a bundle wrapped in twine. His ledger, the ledger's confession. Pastor untied the twine and read aloud a selection of entries, the ones the doctor insisted must be shared. Journal, April 1883. Eleanor Price labors at the stroke of midnight. I fear what will come. The legends were warnings, not tales. June 1883. The child walks before it crawls. It mimics voices it has never heard. Last night, it stood on the table watching the window. It tilted its head when the woods hummed. July 1883. It has no shadow at dawn. September 1883. I took it to the river. I begged the Lord for a sign. When I looked down, its reflection stared at me with black eyes, though its real eyes are pale. I cannot allow it to grow stronger. Final entry. I left it where it wished to go, into the spruce grove. But the humming has never stopped. The congregation fell into horrified silence. For the first time, the doctor spoke openly. The child Lila carried was called. Not born. I have seen its like once before, and I fear what it will become. No one dared ask what had happened to Abel Fitch. Miss Alma's testimony. Miss Alma stepped forward, then her limp pronounced. Her face gray with fear. She told the church that 12 years ago, she followed the doctor into the woods. She saw him leave a small, quiet child beneath the spruce grove. She was the only witness. It walked toward the trees as if it already knew the path. She whispered. It did not look back at him. It smiled at me. Her limp, she revealed, came from what happened next. The trees closed. The child vanished. Something struck her unseen. Powerful, and she woke alone hours later. Ever since, she heard the humming at night. And now, it had returned. The town's decision. Some wanted to hunt the woods. Some wanted to burn them. Some insisted the doctor should be hanged for refusing to help Lila, but no one took action, because that same night, as the town argued in the church, a soft lullaby drifted from the ridge. Everyone heard it. Everyone froze. The hymn had no words, just a slow, rocking melody, the sound of something cradling itself. The pastor whispered, "It sounds older than the valley." And the doctor whispered back, "It is." The truth was out. But the horror was only beginning. The midnight child was no longer alone in the woods. Something had taken Abel Fitch. Something wanted more. A shiver crawls. Winter deepened. Families abandoned their homes. Horses refused to cross the valley. The roads iced over, trapping those who remained. And every night around midnight, the humming returned, a duet now. Two voices, one high, one impossibly low. The spruce grove became a place no one dared look at directly. People reported seeing shapes there at dusk, small but tall, bending but upright, white-faced but eyeless in the shadows. The doctor aged years in. Weeks. He boarded his windows. He rosined his door. Hinges. He kept a lantern lit at all hours. But the humming seeped through the cracks. The last sightings misses. Willow Crane claimed she saw a child the size of a 4-year-old crouching near her well. But when she approached, it moved in a blur, vanishing behind a stump with a speed no human could match. Baird McLennan, the blacksmith, heard someone calling his name in his dead wife's voice. When he opened his door, he saw a small shape holding a lantern. The lantern wasn't lit. It wasn't even real. It was carved from ice. And then it melted in the shape's hand. The doctor's final night. Dr. Coulter's housekeeper found his bed empty on a frigid morning in February. His boots were missing, his coat gone, his ledger left open. On the final page he had written, "It comes for its maker, not the child I saved, but the one I abandoned." Tracks were found leading toward the woods. 2 sets, one his size, one smaller. Much smaller. They ended at the spruce grove, where the snow swirled in a perfect circle. Warm to the touch, as if something had recently stood there. No body was ever recovered. No grave was ever dug. Only the humming remained. The valley today briar. Hollows slowly emptied over the decades. The church rotted. The inn collapsed. The river dried into a whisper. But hikers passing through the region still report strange sounds. Near the old Hartwell land, a lullaby with no words, footprints that appear overnight, small and deep. A doctor's lantern swinging on its own. And some claim that if you stand near the Kiumu spruce grove at midnight on a snow-covered night, a child with pale eyes will stand just behind you. Waiting for you to turn around. Don't. Whatever you see will follow you home. The midnight child was never meant to be delivered, but once born, it belongs to the valley forever. The trees remember. The wind carries its lullaby, and the curse waits for another generation. A silence falls that never ends.